Hello, welcome to the Fireside Chat this week. This is our friendly forum for everybody in the African drone industry and beyond, in fact. It focuses on women, but men are also very welcome to join in, and we have got some today, so that's really cool. But really the purpose of the forum is just to network, share stories, share news, support each other, offer guidance, share expertise, perhaps. And each weekly special guest. This week, our guest is Suzanne von Rauenstein from Cranfield Aviation and All About Drones. But I think just before, well, I was going to say who we got here that's new, but I think, yeah, who's new today? Who hasn't been on the forum yet?
It's my first time here.
Cool. Well, please, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, I'm really happy to be here, and I'm very eager to hear what everyone has to say and to learn as much as possible.
Excellent. And you're from Zimbabwe?
Yes, I'm based in Harare, Zimbabwe.
Cool. Well, great to have you here. Yeah. Anybody else want to say hello? Anybody else who's new?
Well, actually, Louise, it's my first time as well.
Okay.
So I start with a bang.
Excellent. Yes. Excellent. Cool. Okay. Well, yeah, we'll join in the chat as we go along. But yeah, Suzanne, thank you very much for joining us today. I think just as a very quick introduction, you're a helicopter pilot, chief instructor at Cranfield, and designated remote flight examiner. That's quite a list of serious roles there. But yeah, you're going to give us you're going to talk to us about the requirements and the process of getting a remote pilot's license.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so hi everyone. So thanks for the introduction, Louise. So just quickly, a little bit about my background. I started in the aviation industry about 13 years ago. I was one of those people that always struggled to find, the perfect job for myself. So often I find myself in situations where I would do specific office work, and then I would realize, oh my goodness, this is so not for me. I need to get out. I need to do something different. And then often I would rather just go back to waitressing and work in a restaurant than, sit in an office and do the boring stuff and be stuck between four walls. So long story short, in my 30s only, I discovered the aviation industry just by chance. I was visiting my parents who lived in Somerset West in the Western Cape at that point in time. And I saw a newspaper article about helicopters and the type of work that you can do with helicopters. And it immediately just grabbed my attention. I was like, oh my goodness, this is what I've been waiting for. This article speaks to me. It sounds so exciting and amazing and just different to the typical type of jobs that you get out there. So I said to my mom, oh my goodness, look at this. I think this is what I should do. And she said to me, well, it's very interesting that you say that, because that's a very old newspaper. But when I saw the article, I thought of you, and I thought, let me keep it and just show it to you. And I've forgotten about it. And now you pick this up, and so I think it's really meant to be. Then obviously I decided, okay, let me investigate. I found out that it's super expensive to try and learn how to fly a helicopter, like most things in the aviation industry. And I thought I'll never be able to do it. But I remember my mom said to me, just go for it. It's one of those things you're going to be 50, 60, or even 70 one day and think, I should have done it. And then I decided, okay, I'm just going to jump in, and I don't know how I'm going to get the money, but I'll make a plan. So slowly but surely, at that point in time, I was still a waitress and working in a bar as a bar lady. And I went for my introduction flight. And I remember I landed and I was completely over the moon. I couldn't stop talking. I was talking at 1,000 words a minute. And I was like, oh, wow, that was so amazing. So I realized, okay, this is it. I just need to make a plan. This is what I would like to do. So slowly but surely, I started flying. It took me about 2 years to get all my hours and to borrow enough money to finish the course. It was quite a process, but the interesting thing with things like this is if you find your passion or something like that and you're so committed and passionate about it, doors just start to open. So before I knew it, I was a commercial helicopter pilot. And yeah, and so that's where my aviation career started. And interestingly enough, these days I'm more involved in flying drones and training of drone licenses. But the interesting thing is that's still very much part of the aviation industry. Louise, you and I had a chat about it yesterday quickly. It's when what people don't realize is when they start flying drones commercially, they're actually entering the aviation industry. You just happen to be a surveyor operating in the aviation industry or environmentalist operating in the aviation industry. So it's extremely important to learn the aviation industry as a whole and how it works. And a lot of people, when they come for their drone licenses, have no idea what world they're about to enter. It's always very exciting when we do the training. People are often shocked when they come to class and they sit there and they're like, oh my goodness, we didn't realize that we have to learn so much to get a commercial license. And obviously they learn all sorts of stuff, and I'll show you the different modules that we do and the subjects that we cover and the process that we follow to get before someone can actually obtain their commercial drone license. Yeah, so that's my background, and that's how I got involved with the drone industry. From helicopters, it was sort of a natural progression. A lot of work these days are being taken over by drones. So back in the day, I used to fly a lot of photographers and videographers with helicopters, but these days, all of that can be done by drones. So it was sort of just a natural thing for me to go from helicopters. I still fly commercially as often as I can, often more over weekends and so on. But loving the drones, it's a whole new world that opened up with so many different possibilities and opportunities. And really exciting because it's forever evolving and quite quickly with new technology coming out all the time. So very exciting. So that's the background and how I became a drone instructor and designated RPAS examiner.
Okay. But I mean, becoming a designated RPAS, what does that involve? What does that require?
So, Louise, so first, so it helps if you've got a manned aviation instructor rating. That helps a lot, especially if you come from that background. It's a lot easier because you understand the aviation industry as a whole and not just one segment of the aviation industry, the RPAS section. It's extremely important to understand airspaces and everything involved in the processes involved in the aviation industry. So that's the one thing. So to become a designated RPAS examiner, you basically need 2 years in instruction experience, at least 2 years. Then you have to write a thesis and present it to the Civil Aviation Authority. You send in 3 topics and they choose one for you to do your thesis on. You do the thesis and then you present that thesis in front of a board of people from the CIA, and they ask you all sorts of questions and put you through, you have to jump through a few hoops. They make sure that you understand regulations, not just the drone regulations, but a broader sense of aviation regulations regarding general rules of the air, for instance, Part 91, rules regarding dangerous goods, safety management systems, aviation organizations, and so on. And then you actually do a practical session where they come and evaluate you. And you have to get a student and they come and test you and see if you're the right person. if you become a designated RPAS examiner, it basically means that you're an extension of the Civil Aviation Authority. So as a RPAS examiner, you basically work for the CIA, so to speak, when you test these students. And it's obviously impossible for the Civil Aviation Authority to test all the students that are getting trained out there. So they appoint these people to work as an extension of them, to just make sure that the training schools are actually training the guys up to a certain standard, the guys and girls, obviously, up to a certain standard, and that they follow the regulations. So, and to make sure that the guys that qualify are actually at a specific level. And that's basically what that's about.
Okay. Crumbs. Okay. But you basically give the thumbs up or the thumbs down if someone's going to get their license, in essence.
Yes, basically it works like that. But there's a process. So in South Africa, before I can test them, the student has to get a letter of recommendation. And the letter of recommendation has to be given by an instructor from the training school. So that instructor will never issue a letter of recommendation if the student is not competent yet. And it's not just competency in regards of being able to fly the drone, but also they obviously get tested on the regulations, application of the law, practical application, map work, how to source certain information like NOTAMs and AIPs and AICs and all the relevant aviation stuff. So basically, by the time the student gets to me, they should be competent. So it makes my job a little bit easier in a sense. But every now and again, you do get students that you unfortunately have to mark as not yet competent. And often the guys that you mark as not yet competent are the guys that come back after 2 years for the renewal, and they haven't flown for 2 years, and they just pitch up there without any preparation or anything. And then unfortunately, sometimes they have to go back and practice again and then come back and we do a retest. But at the moment, there's only about 8 designated flight examiners in South Africa. Yes, quite a few females actually as well, which is great to see.
Okay. Oh, cool. So, I mean, what is the process then? What if someone comes, sort of says, hey, I want to pick up, get a pilot's license. What are the requirements or criteria?
Okay, so in South Africa, you need to be 18 years old. It's not necessary to have passed matric or grade 12, as long as you're 18. There's certain things that you have to do. So first of all, there's a theory component, and there's 9 different modules. Schools divided into more or less similar type of modules. The Civil Aviation Authority prescribe exactly what we need to teach the guys. So the theory course is a 7-day course. It is very intense, but very extreme. People love it. They learn so much. So it's so exciting. And just to give you an example of the different modules that we cover. So first of all, we do aviation law, and specifically the drone regulations in South Africa, which falls under Part 101 in South Africa. So we teach them basically the do's and the don'ts. What are you allowed to do? What are you not allowed to do? Then we look at aerodynamics. So of course, because it's an aircraft, we need to know how it flies. How does it stay in the air? How does it all work? So we cover aerodynamics. We look at construction and parts. So what type of construction and different parts does the drone consist of? We look at the blades, that we use the different motors, brushless and brushed motors. We even look at jet engines and turbine engines. Then we move on to batteries, which is an extremely important component. A lot of people don't realize how important batteries are, because if your battery is not working properly, or if it swells up or do any or something weird happens, then obviously the drone will fall out the sky, because it needs that power source to keep it in the air. So batteries, we do different systems. So for instance, how does the remote control and the actual aircraft talk to each other? How does it transfer data? Different sense and avoid systems. We even look at meteorology, which is basically weather, the study of weather. Students find that extremely interesting. It's a very nice subject to teach. I love teaching meteorology. We even teach them how to read METARs and TAFs, which is basically your weather reports and your weather forecast, which is it gets printed or in a coded format. So we have to teach them how to decode it. We look at navigation. We look at site assessment and practical application of how to figure out what airspace you're in. So we do a lot of map work and navigation. We teach students how to work out if there's a certain distance that they want to fly and they have a battery with a certain amount of flight time. How many times would they need to change batteries, as an example, to complete the job? So that's basically the theory component, and students have to get 75% to pass that. So it's quite a high pass rate. Then only after the theory, they can come for the practical part of the training. So the practical part, it depends. Some people just have a natural skill. As I find, especially the youngsters, anyone from the age of 18 to about 28, it's almost like they were born with a controller in their, or a control in their controller in their hand. So I always find it fascinating. Some young kids that come to training and they say they've never, ever touched a drone before. And then within a day, we can teach them to fly. And then, of course, there's other people that take quite a bit longer. And it's quite interesting. I find that the older people get, sometimes the harder they have to work to get this new skill. And I think it's just different times that people grew up in. You know, kids today, they grow up with PlayStation and Xbox and all sorts of stuff that they do. And then there's another important component. So before you learn to fly the drone practically. But the interesting thing is, in South Africa, we don't teach the guys to fly the drone in GPS mode or position hold. So for those of you that don't know what that means, if you fly the drone in position hold, the drone uses satellites to hold its position. So you can literally take your hands off the controls and the drone will just stop and hover in one spot. So that sort of, it assists you quite a bit. But we teach students in South Africa to fly it in ATI mode. And basically what that means is we switch off the satellite system or the navigation system. And now the pilot physically all the time, 100% has to control this drone in windy conditions. In other words, the drone will never just stop and hover. You constantly, for the 20 minutes that you have the battery, or the battery is going to last, you physically have to fly that drone and compensate for wind and drift, and while doing all these maneuvers. So it's quite challenging. And for a lot of people in the beginning, I think the biggest challenge is the fact that you get that feeling of being completely out of control. It feels like the wind is the boss in the situation and has control over the drone, and you have to learn slowly but surely that you actually the only person that can control this drone. So you have to be quite assertive. So it's quite a challenge for people, but at the end of the practical course, they go from, just from here to a extremely high skills level. They walk away and they actually feel like a proper commercial pilot. It's not just someone that buys a drone from a hobby shop and they take it out the box and they read a bit of the manual and they start flying. At the end of their practical training, they really have the confidence. They can handle emergency situations. Even if the navigation system fails, they'll be able to land the drone effectively and safely. So that's great. And I think there's a lot of value in that. And then there's two other things that the guys need to do before they can get tested, or actually three things. they need to pass an aviation medical, and it needs to be a class 3. So they go to a proper aviation doctor. The aviation doctor tests their eyes, their ears, their general fitness. You even do an ECG. They ask you 1 or 2 questions regarding your mental state, just in case you want to use the drones for bad stuff. And then you have to do an English proficiency test, because English is the language of aviation across the world. There needs to be a certain level of English that these students can obviously speak and understand, because they need to do radio work. And then the last thing before they can do their skills test is the restricted radio telephony exam, which is also quite something, because it's the exact same exam that the manned pilots, private pilots write, the helicopter and the fixed wing pilots. So they really have to study for that one, but by the end of that exam, they really understand airspaces and different classes of airspace, and controlled airspace and uncontrolled and things like that. So that's basically the whole process. And then when they're ready, they come to me and then I test them.
Crumbs. How long does that take from start to finish on average?
Yeah, so good question. So if everything goes well, the theory has to be a minimum of 7 days, and that includes your exam. Then you have to take a day to do the restricted radio exam, although it's only 25 questions, and the exam is only an hour. There's quite a bit of studying involved in that. There's a handbook that they have to study. And then they have to take time to do the English proficiency, but we normally include that in the theory part of the course. And then the practical flying is about 5 days. And then on the 6th day, we do the skills test. So all in all, you can do everything in 2 weeks. And then you're qualified commercial drone pilot. So it sounds like quite a process. And as you know, South Africa is probably the strictest in the world when it comes to drone regulations, and to get our people qualified. But I do feel there is a lot of value in training people properly. I know most students at the end of the course say to me, wow, if we didn't come on this course, I never would have realized that I can actually literally kill someone with a drone. You know, it's quite dangerous when you think about it. Little children that's lost their eyes, and people that chop their fingers, and all sorts of stuff that happens. So I think there's a lot of value in doing it like a proper training for the commercial guys. Yeah, so I've talked a lot now. I don't know if anyone has any questions.
Anybody? Can't see any hands. Oh yeah, Ella.
Hello, Ella.
Hi, sorry, I'm still on my phone. I would like to know, I did practical in a different area, a trade, if I can put it that way. And I found that the books that I've used, those practical books with the modules, worth more to me than any of the most other books we got. Like if we get to the college, and so any training material. So if I would like to buy or get those training material module books, where can I get some of those?
So Ella, each training school or approved training organization has their own training material. So they have to use the guidelines or the specific technical standards that's specified in Part 101 of the CIA regulations. And they have to cover those subjects. So if you want to purchase, are you a qualified drone pilot or not at all?
No, I'm not.
Okay, but you would like to become one, or is it just for personal use?
Firstly, I will say for personal use, but then maybe later on to qualify as a pilot. Yes.
Yeah, so the thing is, because there's sort of intellectual property involved with the training organizations that actually write these modules and these books, I think the best thing would be to speak to a specific training organization and see, if you would be able to purchase some of the books that they have. You're welcome.
What training organizations would you suggest for some out of the top of your head?
Definitely Cranfield Aviation Training.
The one she works for.
The one I work for. But just a bit on Cranfield. So Cranfield Aviation Training has been in the aviation training industry, part of the industry, for 19 years now, almost 20 years. So they've really been around for a long time. And literally 99% of our drone instructors are all manned pilots as well, either helicopter or fixed wing pilots, very experienced people. So it's just, you get a well-rounded introduction to the aviation industry. So Louise put our website there, www.cranfield.co.za. And you're welcome to contact us directly via social media. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. We have a web page, or you can just email Anne at Cranfield, which is ANN@cranfield.co.za. Yes, Sharon.
Thank you so much. I would save that. Thank you.
Okay, Ella, you're welcome. Hi, Sharon.
Hi, Suzanne. Thanks for the information. So I just want a clarification. For South Africa, is it required that you have to have both the in-person and the hands-on training? So we call it ground school and flight school. And the reason why I'm asking is because in the United States, you're required to have a drone license or certification to fly for commercial purposes, but you're not required to take a class. So if you want to self-study, you can do that. And you're also not required to do the hands-on flight training. So in South Africa, is it required to have the hands-on flight training?
Yes, in South Africa, it's a legal requirement. So no pilot is allowed to do any commercial, corporate or non-profit work with drones if they haven't gone through this process. So the theory part, you either have to attend class or ground school, but also there is a possibility, for instance, through Cranfield, to do it via Zoom. So they can do live stream classes from the comfort of their homes, but still they have to attend a minimum of 7 days, including the exam. And then the practical training. So the law doesn't specify how many hours you need to qualify for your commercial license. So if it's a person that's got a natural talent and they were just born with a controller in their hands, if they can do it in 2 days, then they can do it in 2 days. If you need 2 weeks, then you need 2 weeks. But it is a requirement to physically attend ground school as well as the practical flying, yes.
And in those classes, are they approved by your Civil Aviation Authority, or is it?
Yes.
Because here it's literally anybody can hang a shingle and say, I'm teaching the training. So it has to be an approved body.
Yes, absolutely. So it has to be done by an approved training organization, or ATO, as we call them in South Africa. That ATO has to be approved by the Civil Aviation Authority, and then the specific RPAS course or RPL license has to be approved by the Civil Aviation Authority. They even go as far as to say that when you do your practical training, you're only allowed to do it at your approved RPAS airfield. So you can't just set up anywhere next to the road or in a veld and start training people. It has to be approved. So approved training organization, or ATO, needs to conduct the training.
I like that approach, because that's one thing that personally I feel is missing here. Is the required hands-on training. And I know in Canada, they also require an approved organization in order to complete the process.
Yes, I find it extremely valuable. I mean, from a training point of view, we can see the skill level when someone arrives at the school on the first day, to when we actually sign them out for their final skills test. It's magnificent to see. You know, you feel that as a helicopter pilot, it scares me sometimes to think how many drone guys are flying around. And I'm talking about the private drone guys that doesn't have any training behind their names, you know, flying around without realizing the dangers of the machine. They don't have the skill level. Because I always say to my students, certain helicopter work that I do for security companies, we fly extremely low. And when I say low, I mean sometimes 300 feet AGL. So that is, and drone pilots, commercial pilots are allowed to fly up to 400 feet AGL in South Africa without extra special permission. So already there we in the same airspace. So if we have private guys that hasn't got that skills level and the wind is howling out there and they don't hear a helicopter coming or approaching, and then all of a sudden there's a helicopter and they don't have that skill level, it's very possible for a drone to go into a tail rotor of a helicopter. And if that would happen, there's no time for me to do an emergency procedure and actually recover from that. It will definitely result in a crash and then obviously loss of lives. So I do believe there is a lot of value. I just wish that private guys also need some form of training, even if it's a online course where they learn about the basic regulations and what's allowed and what's not allowed, but then also maybe a day or two practical flying experience before they're allowed to take the RPAS out and actually fly. That would be ideal, to be honest. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Louise, I
Yes.
just wanted to acknowledge Rudo had a hand up earlier.
Yes.
Rudo, did you still have a question? Apologies.
It's fine. Thank you so
Rita.
much, Suzanne, for all the information that you've shared. So I'm fairly new to the drone industry. So my question is, can the license be obtained by non-South African citizens? Because I think at the moment, as far as I know, in Zimbabwe, there's no body that's issuing RPLs. So can anyone obtain the license?
Yes, you're absolutely right. So specifically, I know how it works in Zimbabwe. I was there for a bit of training as well. And I don't know if you, there's a guy that did his training with us, Tawanda, and I'll put you in contact with him if you want.
Yes, I do know him.
Oh, you know Tawanda. Okay, fantastic.
Everyone knows Tawanda.
He's on the call.
Is he? Oh, there you are.
Where's Tawanda?
You sneaky Tawanda. We didn't see you join.
Oh, yeah.
Hey guys,
Hi, Tawanda.
how's it going?
All right, thanks, and you.
Good, thanks.
Nice to see you. You're hiding there in the background, right?
Yeah, I'm just in the car. I'll switch on my video just now. Don't worry.
Oh, shame. No worries. Okay, so Tawanda can actually, Rudo, answer your question, but Tawanda, I don't know if you, because you obviously have first-hand experience as a Zimbabwe that came to South Africa and did his course through Cranfield. Do you maybe just want to explain to Rudo how the whole process works in Zimbabwe?
Yeah, sure. I think with just for Rudo and everyone on the platform, if anyone has the same kind of question, like I had to get the training done in South Africa. Zimbabwe currently doesn't have a training school as yet. So the process I went through was going to Cranfield. Suzanne was actually my instructor when I did my training. So I'm not sure in terms of the first part what Suzanne explained, but I'm sure she told you everything. But the process in itself normally takes about, 3 months. Is 3 months, 4 months a good timeline to give?
Yeah, you can do it in 2 weeks. It just depends, because the theory is 7 days to one down, in the prac 6 days. But I think you did theory, went back to Zim and came back again.
Yes, so I had to go back and forth.
Yes.
And went through the process. And then obviously you have to wait a little bit of a period for the actual license to come through. after you've submitted all your documentation. So it's pretty straightforward. I think, if you can connect with a training school in South Africa, that will probably be the easier route to go. It just needs, proper planning so that you make sure that you do it within the given time. Because like Suzanne was saying, 1 week you're doing the theory, it's about 8 days for theory, and then you've got to wait a couple of days, you've got medicals, and then you've got another week that you need to do for practicals and that kind of thing. So it just requires good planning.
And then Tawana, am I correct in saying that because there's no training schools in Zimbabwe, if you actually want to do commercial work in Zimbabwe, that South African RPL license that you obtained is extremely valuable. The process works different to the process in South Africa, because in South Africa, once you have your commercial license, that's sort of just the first step. The next step then would be to either work for an ROC, which is an RPAS operating company. And it's basically a company that's got permission from Civil Aviation Authority to operate commercially using drones as the main source of income, so to speak. So, ROC. So you can't, even if you have a commercial license in South Africa, you can't legally work yet. You have to either create your own company, your ROC, and that is a process that obviously costs a bit more money and takes a while, or you can work for a specific ROC, and that's how you become legal. When Zimbabwe, the ROC and things aren't quite in place yet. So if you have a South African license, it is seen, that you qualified and that you're a commercial pilot, and then there's ways for you to still ask permission for certain commercial flights directly from CAS in Zimbabwe, and they can then give you permission to actually do certain commercial work. So the license would definitely be a step in the right direction, because then they know you're properly trained and you've got the required skills level.
Okay, thank you.
Louise, Vuchila had a question.
Yes.
I know you put your hand down, but we see you.
Kim is in charge of that.
Hi, Suzanne.
Hi.
Thank you so much for your information. My
You're
question
welcome.
is, when you have this side we do part 101, right? And then in overseas they do part 107. So with my license, can I be able to work that side? Because we can see a bigger market when it comes to drones that side, and they look for drone pilots like each and every day.
Yes.
And then here in South Africa, the market of drone pilots is like, it's on a scale of 0 for me,
Yeah. So if you say that side, what other country are
the
you
part
specifically
101, I mean like in overseas.
In which
Like
country?
in the US.
specifically?
In the
In the
US.
US?
Yeah.
Oh, in the
Even
US.
in Germany, even in Dubai, there's a huge market for drone pilots. But this side, we don't have that market. What causes that?
So that's interesting, Kim, and maybe you can also, because you're part of an ROC, maybe give some feedback regarding that. But it's interesting that that is the perception out there, because I know specifically of 2 ROC companies that's currently looking for pilots. There's always constantly, I think it's just because there's quite a few ROCs out there at the moment. In the beginning, it was quite difficult for the guys to get legal. So it took quite a few years for companies to actually obtain their ROC licenses. And I think that was the thing that held the market back. Now there's over 60 ROCs, I think almost 80 ROCs. So actually there's more and more companies that's becoming legal, and they need more and more pilots to actually fulfill these roles. So I think it was just a question because of the legal constraints, so to speak, that it maybe feels that there's not so much work out there. But I can put you in contact with 2 companies that's currently looking for pilots if you want, if you already have your license. to answer your question regarding the US and European countries, so it's country specific. So it's very difficult to answer it, in a broad term like that. So if you decide to go to Dubai, you literally have to contact the Civil Aviation Authority of the UAE and ask them what the process is it possible with a South African license to convert it to a UAE license, as an example, and what would be the process involved. It's the same with manned aviation. If I, for instance, want to go and fly in Germany, my South African license is good enough for that, but I do need to pass their air law exams because obviously their laws are a little bit different. And normally I have to do meteorology, which is the weather for that specific country, which also makes sense. And then you have to do a skills test. So one of their DFEs will actually test you on the practical flying skills and sign you out. So it's very possible that other countries will have a similar approach, but because South Africa is so strict when it comes to obtaining a license, it's actually, a very popular license to have, and it can actually take you quite far if you go to other countries where it's not that strict, especially in Africa. There's lots of opportunities there with a South African RPL license. Kim, I don't know if you want to add some. Oh, sorry. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. That was helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, let me just add a little bit. Vuchile, I hear you. I think part of what Suzanne is saying is correct. Post 2015, it was very, very difficult for companies to get ROCs. And so it probably took a couple of years for maybe even 20 approved ROCs to get their licenses to start operating. And by the way, as soon as you get your ROC approval, like as in the demonstrations to be done, etc., then you still need to wait for your paperwork. Then you could only start marketing. So the life cycle of an ROC to become profitable, to be able to make to be able to become profitable is probably like 2 years. So I think we're at the cusp of change. Suzanne's right. I think we're at 74 ROCs now. Quite a few of them are small and maybe even dormant. There are a handful of big ones that have been there from the beginning. But Vuchile, you should also join the Drone Council, and that's been formed last year. The Drone Council is now the link between the industry and the government. And I'm actually going to write about this next week. There is a lot of cool stuff happening in terms of the regulations being evolved a little bit, and they're also going to make it easier for people to work in uncontrolled airspace in areas where it's potentially not as risky. And so depending on what you would want to do, it will be a lot easier for or pilots to even operate independently and maybe even get a categorized ROC, if you like. So there aren't a lot of jobs compared to what we would expect. Every now and again there are some advertised, and Suzanne's right, there are a few that are advertising at the moment. But I think you'll see in the next 6 months things will change. And just lastly, and I'm aware of time, I think the reason why the industry hasn't grown as much as we expect is because the services are still very expensive. So an ROC really historically has cost a few million rand and taken kind of 2 years to get in place. The technology is still quite expensive. And then the RPLs, I don't know for the guys in the US, I think the RPLs cost like $1,900, something like that, for someone to become certified. So I think our service that we're offering clients is still quite expensive. And so our clients haven't evolved as much yet, but that's also changing. So I think mid of last year, things started started happening, and you'll see there's a little bit of momentum now. And so definitely don't give up. Don't leave our country, please. We need you here. Stay. I hope that made sense.
Yeah.
Cool.
It does. Keep being here.
Say again.
It does keep make sense. Thank you so much.
Cool. I see Sam. Sam, you've got your hand up.
Hey, ladies, gentlemen.
Hi.
I'm more so, I had a comment. I too am studying for my 107, part 7 exam to learn about drones. And Suzanne, I'm not really sure what I want to do exactly. I know it's definitely something around careers and education, but my comment is, as you say, using the drone. I've downloaded some online programs and I finally learned how to get up in the air. But like I said, because I am a little older and I never really was good at games other than Galactica, that's about it, and Defender. But I cannot really work that controller, but I am not gonna allow that to discourage me. I'm just gonna keep, like you say, it's gonna take me a little longer. But I look forward, to reporting back to everybody in a few months that I have passed and I literally know how to keep the drone up in the air, my electronic ones. So thank you so much for your encouragement and your story. And I too used to waitress. I love waitressing. I made most money there. But yes.
I hear you, and you've learned lots of valuable life lessons, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Sam, yeah, so we always say you just need enough stick time. So enough stick time on the controller, and it's literally just new pathways that you need to form in your brain, because they're not there, and you have to literally go and build those pathways and make them nice and pretty and put lights on and paint the lines and whatever. And everyone can learn how to fly a drone. Definitely, it's just a matter of keeping at it. You'll see one day you're just going to wake up and it's going to be there, and then you'll never be able to forget it again, which is great. Once you have it, you have it.
Thank you.
Great.
Exactly. Cool. Did you see that the new DJI FPV has got a single hand? I remember Romeo talked about that when he was here last year or the year before, sorry, pre-COVID. And he was here and he was talking about this one-handed operational, stick control, and that's quite neat.
It looks amazing.
Sharon.
Yeah, it's interesting when Sam talks about having to learn on the sticks. I recently got a new drone mid-COVID last year, a Skydio, which is one of the new brands here in the States, fairly new. And when I first opened the box, I didn't get one with the controller. You could buy one with the controller, or you could just get it because it comes with like the one piece, the wand. And I got it, I opened it up, and because I'm used to flying a DJI with the controller, I went, okay, I'm not ready for this. I had to order the controller, but while I was waiting for the controller to come, because it was going to take like 10 or 12 days, I connected my iPad, because you can also fly via the iPad, and the iPad gives you the face of a controller, but it's nothing like flying with the sticks. You need to get the sticks. And I thought, you know what, that Sam was talking about feeling old. I'm thinking, you know what, that more and more of these drones are coming out with just a wand. And it's going to be like autonomous cars, those of us that are used to driving. And now you're going to just be able to sit back and the car's going to drive. I'm like, you know what? I don't know if I'm ready for this next one. But it was pretty cool once I figured out that, basically the wand, if you could put it in your pocket, the drone will just follow you. But you know what? It didn't have the same excitement of flight that you have when you're really controlling the drone with the sticks.
Okay. Well, it is, yeah, I'm not sure about that. Taylor, you said you've already got one and you've been enjoying it.
No, I wish I had one, but I've already fallen in love with it, just watching the videos.
I thought you were... Okay.
No. I'm in love with all technology. I'm one of those nerds that waits for the Apple events, waits for the DJI content, waits on social media with bated breath, and I actually handle a lot of the Cranfield social media, so kind of sit there going, ooh! So Kim knows a lot of stuff on, and I wait for that to come. So I shouldn't probably get my hands on one. I'll be broke. But
By the way, Taylor is also an RPAS instructor. She's
I
really
am.
cool. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Excellent.
Yeah,
Excellent.
one of the baby ones.
How are you finding the classes split? We've got a couple of minutes left, but how are you finding the classes split? Are you seeing more and more women coming on the classes?
Susie,
Either-
me, or me.
Oh, you can go, Taylor.
Either of you.
Well, it's actually, and Susie can attest to this as well. It's actually really cool. We've seen a lot of splits, and first, I think for the first few years, it was generally male dominated, much like aviation. And now we've just seen a whole load of women come through, kids just coming out of school, and even industry professionals. I mean, we have survey guys that come from all over, and we've had fixed wing pilots, females that come through as well, and they really enjoy it. So yeah, we're seeing a lot of diversity, and it's really cool. Yeah, it's really, really.
And it's interesting, and Taylor can maybe say if she agrees with me, but I find if we have a class split, males and females that we train at the practical airfield, the guys,
they back a bit and the girls take over.
Yeah, the girls really fly well because the guys want to race all the time. You know, they fast and they take chances, and I always say to the girls, you fly like a girl, and that's such a compliment because you cautious and you do things right. And so it's really interesting to see how guys and girls handle things differently.
Definitely. Suppose that's why our insurance is lower.
Exactly.
So Andy, you do.
Sam has her hand up.
Oh, sorry.
Sam has her hand up.
Oh,
hi,
right, sorry.
Sam.
I'm good. I think I did my question.
Okay.
Oh, right. No, I was just going to ask Tawanda if, sort of seeing kids, when he's been doing drone training for kids and how that's been split, interesting if that's a nice split, the girls attending as well.
Yeah, actually, it's been quite good. I think at our last drone holiday camp, we had about 20 kids, and about 6 of them were girls. So it's definitely increasing.
Cool. Okay. Oh, that's good news. Excellent. Has anybody else got any other questions for Suzanne?
I got one last question.
Sure, Sharon.
So here in the States, in the United States, our initial Part 107 license or certification is good for 2 years. And soon here in a few weeks, we'll be able to take the new or the recurrent training, as it's called here, online, whereas before we had to go and physically take it again. Do you all have a recurrent training, and how often is it required?
Yes, very good question. So every 24 months, a commercial pilot needs to renew their licenses. If they fly constantly and their skills level is still right up there, and they're obviously familiar with all the regulations and everything that they need to be able to pass the skills test, then they don't have to come for recurrency training. Then they can just book for a revalidation test, and then with the DRE, and then we test them like we would with initial skills test, and just make sure that they still have the necessary skills and that they're up to date with the latest information and so on of the industry. Some people prefer to come for a few days of just a bit of a refresher course, which we can provide them with. A lot of people just want to come and fly, because most of the flying is normally done in GPS mode or position hold. The guys often don't practice in ATI mode without the navigation system. So then they just want to come again and get that feel of how it feels to fly in ATI mode. Then they would come for a couple of days of training, and then they go for their revalidation skills test. So we do have that every 24 months.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And you're quite right. There's normally Oh, sorry, Kim.
Sorry, no, I just put my hand up. Go, Louise.
No. And there's almost always a panic. I've heard many people go, oh, crumbs, I got my revalidation. What do I do with this thing? You know, and there's such a panic for it. You know?
Exactly.
Yeah. Suzanne, I had a question.
Yes.
So we used to obviously have to do a class 4, and now it's a class 3. And from a COASA perspective, we've had quite a few questions around the fact that people are now having to redo their medical, which was still a class 4, and they had like 4 years or whatever, or 3 years, and now they're failing because they've now obviously got stricter measures, or at least the class 3 now includes like color vision.
Yes.
And I found out a little bit about that from one of the medical AVMEDs that I know, and it's a big issue.
Yeah.
I don't even know what effects that's going to have.
I know, Kim. I've picked that up. I had an aviation medical doctor phone me for just some expert advice on why would it be a problem for a drone pilot if they colorblind. What is the big issue? So immediately I can think of 2 things. So the one thing, say you're busy flying and your tablet or your phone's battery goes off, and now the only way you can rely on the status of your drone would be by looking at the colored lights at the back, the LED lights. So we know we want a single flashing green, then we have satellite lock and everything is working okay. That's basically a way for the drone to communicate with us. So there's red, green, and that white, orange lights that flash at the back. So if you're colorblind, then obviously you won't be able to distinguish between those 2. The other thing where it might become an issue is, say, for instance, you're flying at night, you have permission to fly at night under your ROC, and there's an aircraft flying very close to where you're operating. We know that navigation lights on manned aviation aircraft has specific lights. So on the starboard side or the right side of the pilot will always be your green light, and on the port side or the left side of the pilot will always be a red light. So, and a white light on the tail or the back of the aircraft. So just by looking at the color of lights, because at night it's often difficult to see what direction that aircraft is flying into. So just by looking at the light, you'll be able to say, oh, okay, I can see the green light and the white light. So in other words, it is flying, you know, from my right to my left, or whatever the case might be. So that's the only 2 issues that I can think of. So this aviation doctor then decided to take it up with CAA, and then just, so he's saying that what if we restrict that pilot then to say he's not allowed to fly at night, and as soon as his tablet or his phone goes off, he needs to immediately land, like a normal system that fails, just immediately get to the ground. So I think they're trying to find a solution to get around that. Because I hear you, they actually passed the class 4 medical, and the regulation still actually hasn't changed. It says class 4 in part 101, but under part 67 it now says that drone pilots need class 3. So that's where the problem comes in. But long story short, I think they are trying, because these guys have already spent the money to get their commercial licenses. So it is quite a problem.
It's actually an ICAO directive. It's not CAA, it's ICAO. So anyway, I mean, I know I'm aware of time. We're trying to find out a little bit more about it. And I actually got the 250-page aviation medical policy document today. So we're trying to work through it. Yeah, thank you. It's not all nicely set out in a table, you can imagine, right?
So I just on that, Kim, so as far as I understand it, the guys is okay with their class 4 medical until it expires.
Correct.
So only once it expires, then they have to, the next time around, they have to get the class 3 medical.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll be publishing some information as soon as we know what the implications are and what the restrictions might be. And so, yeah, but people are worried about it, obviously.
Of course, yeah. I think Daisy had her hand up.
Yes.
I know you're past your time here, so thank you for all the great information. And I just wanted to kind of go on that thought of that medical. I love how stringent everything is and the practical flight assessment. I love all of that aspect of it. In class last night, somebody had just asked me about the medical and what if somebody was colorblind. And I was questioning it based on how do they actually analyze the sectional charts? Any thoughts?
So when it comes to manned aviation, the sectional charts and things like that becomes really important. And then if you're colorblind, that becomes a real issue. When we fly drones, however, there's different ways that drone pilots access airspaces and certain information that they need to actually navigate the drone. So there's still ways with new technology to be able to bypass that, where it wouldn't actually become a problem, I think.
Okay. I know as part of my training curriculum, we include pretty heavy training on reading the sectional charts. And I thought, well, I realize technology helps us and is a huge aid for that. I thought, wow, how do they address that? So curious once you were talking about that. So thank you.
Good point.
Great information. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Cool. I think, we're just a couple of minutes over. But sadly, we ought to bring this to a close, but definitely going to ask you back, Suzanne. And
great, thanks, Lou.
Fantastic, especially about ROCs as well. You know, getting your operator's license, that would be really helpful.
Yes,
but thank you
absolutely.
very much. Yeah, some great information there. Thanks.
You're welcome, Louise. And thank you for the opportunity. And it was really nice meeting everyone. So if anyone needs some more information regarding training, you're welcome to email Anne or just contact us at Cranfield or even email me directly, which is Suzanne, SUZ, or let me do it right, Sierra Uniform Zulu Alpha November Echo at cranfield.co.za.
Excellent. Brilliant. Thank you.
All right.
Well, cool. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for joining in this evening. And please come back next week. We're going to talk to Khadija from Zanzibar. She's going to tell us about what she's been doing with drones in Zanzibar next week. So that's going to be good. Yeah.
Lovely.
Come back, bring a buddy, put that mark in your diary, as Kim calls it, the drone date. This is your drone date. Thank you very much. And have a look at Women and Drones, become a member. There is an opportunity there when you're looking at what the membership are and the benefits are, and you'll find that pricing is adjusted for African exchange rates. So please join Women and Drones and get the full benefits from that. And come back next week and bring a buddy. And thank you very much again. Keep well and keep safe.